Geita region in Tanzania. Let's come back to the country now and focus on that conversation we did promise you earlier tonight. We have been reporting that the clamor for constitutional change through the BBI process is running in serious political headwinds. We did see a clash in the House today. The Joint Legal Affairs Committee of both the Senate and the National Assembly was supposed to table a report on the BBI draft bill today. That did not happen. In fact, KTN News understands that the joint team from both houses has not even sat down to work on that report. There are some serious issues that are coming out of that. The National Assembly and the Senate are supposed to be simply ceremonial in terms of a referendum through the popular initiative, but this parliament is seeking to change that. We shall be coming to some of those issues here in this discussion. Let me bring in my panelists tonight. I have with me Homa Bay Senator Moses Kajwang, an ODM senator, joining us from our city centre studio. Also joining us tonight is Jubilee-nominated Member of Parliament, Member of the National Assembly, Jennifer Shamala. Also joining us from the anti-BBI brigade is lawyer and political strategist Kipchumba Karori. It is a show of lawyers. We want to try and explain what is happening to Kenyans and try to see if the BBI train is getting derailed or it's simply normal, typical gerrymandering in terms of the 70 new constituencies, which has come out as a major sticking point in this process. Ladies and gentlemen, many thanks for joining us tonight. Let me start with you, Senator Kajwang. Just bring us up to speed of what's happening. Both members of both houses have remained quite tight-lipped over the issues that are coming to the fore here. Is the BBI process under any threat?
Thank you, Ben, and good evening to my co-panelists and the viewers. As members of parliament, we have to be extremely careful in this conversation. We have something in the standing orders that requires that matters before committees should not be discussed. So I will discuss this matter very carefully so as not to offend the rules of the House. As we know, the two committees from both houses are still working. They are burning the midnight oil to ensure that they bring a report to both houses. I do not think that there is a problem of BBI in Parliament. In fact, one of the reasons why we decided to go for a joint committee of the National Assembly and the Senate was to ensure that we do not waste time, and it was to ensure that we synergize, and to ensure that even if we did public participation, it was not repetitive. So I think from the initiation, there's been a lot of good faith. And as the Joint Committee continues to dig into the issues, there are questions that keep cropping up. The Constitution, Article 255, 256, 257, is not very prescriptive in the manner in which Parliament should act when a bill has been brought before it. And part of the failure is on our part as parliamentarians, because we ought to have agreed on the referendum bill. Unfortunately, right now we seem to have two versions of the bill dealing with the same subject. So I believe that those gaps, the lacuna that might be there in the Constitution is what is triggering the very robust debate. Ben, there is nothing wrong with Parliament sitting and looking at a Constitution, particularly provisions that have not been implemented or have not been exercised before. Because the decision that will be taken will set a precedent that will guide future activities like referenda. So for now, Ben, I think it is wise that as members of Parliament, we wait for the report to come out of the Joint Committee, and we see the direction and the advice they're giving the House. And those of us who are in Parliament, we shall debate robustly and agree on the direction. But there has been a general feeling and a general principle that a constitutional amendment by popular initiative should not be reopened by Parliament, because in that kind of amendment is by the people and Parliament. So the question is, if Parliament goes and overturns what the people said, how do you go back to the people to revalidate? So I think these are valid issues that will form part of our jurisprudence. And I think finally, there could also be delays that have been brought about by the third wave of the COVID pandemic. Just this afternoon in the Senate, we resolved to sit only once a week rather than 3 times a week. That will further introduce certain delays to this process. And these are almost like acts of God that could not have been seen initially.
All right. Be that as it may, as Kenyans continue to follow this, there are some issues that they are talking about, Mheshimiwa Shamala, if I can bring you into this conversation. And it is turning out. Senator Kajwang did point to the fact that Parliament has a ceremonial role in a popular initiative. Is Parliament, that you serve in, the 12th Parliament, trying to change this, to try and have a say and change some of the clauses that some of the members of both sides think should be amended?
Ben, I really don't know where these words are coming from. A ceremonial role, an attempt to change certain articles in the proposed amendment or certain clauses in the proposed amendment. I want to make one thing very clear. As you know very well, I am a member of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. And one of the most important aspects is that we have a joint committee of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee from the National Assembly and the Justice and Legal and Human Rights Affairs Committee in the Senate. And this is a joint committee that sat together. Now, when we have to enforce Article 118 on public participation and ensure that there's a transparency, you cannot say in the process of taking the views of the people of Kenya, and that is part of our mandate as a committee, that is a ceremonial role. That particular aspect is not a ceremonial role. And what happened is that this constitutional amendment bill was laid on the table of both houses, I think on the 7th of March of this year. Thereafter, we had this ad hoc committee that was formed, and the first thing we did was to put an advert in the newspapers inviting the public. The public came on the 11th of March, and let me tell you, as we speak of now, that I am aware of 65 presentations that were made by the people of Kenya. And these 65 presentations do not mean just 65 people. They were representatives of traders, they were representatives of students, they were representatives of professional societies, they were representatives of unions, there was all kinds of people across the board.
All right. We
had to sit and listen to these people. We had allocated only 1 day for that. Unfortunately, it was not enough time, and we listened to them for 2 days the next week. Thereafter, immediately, we retreated to start writing the report in order for it to be tabled by today before the National Assembly. At the retreat, and the committees of houses are open to the public. It is anchored in the Constitution. It is anchored in the standing orders. With all due respect, I don't know where these stories are coming from that we are attempting, one, to alter the Constitution or anything else, because I did not see, I saw a lot of media, a lot of journalists, but at the public participation that was going on in the National Assembly.
All right.
When we retreated to report writing, I did not see anybody. And it was at this stage that we then sought consensus and amongst, and we must remember that this is a joint committees, and we have 2 chairs, the chair from the Senate and the chair from the National Assembly. There were those of the opinion that we can proceed and begin to write the report. There were those of the opinion that because we are writing, and all of us agree on that, we're writing for posterity and for history, we must have a solid report so that in years to come, decades to come, when our children, when the future generations of this country will read this report, they will understand the process that took place.
So it is fair to say,
it's as straightforward and as simple as that.
Is it fair to say the report has not been written and that's why it was not tabled today?
No, that is not. The report has not been completed. There are parts of the report that have already been written. Obviously, the report comprises the process, the beginning, and how, and everything I have just explained,
Right.
who came before the committees, what did they have to say, and then it was broken down to various thematic areas. So parts of the report and a bigger part of the report has already been written.
However, Mheshimiwa, very quickly, even after all this, you cannot change anything, not even a comma, can you?
I don't know about a comma, but let's go to more substantive things. If it's a grammatical mistake, I don't know. But you can definitely not change, because this has already been subjected to the county assemblies. So I don't know where this conversation has come from, because it is definitely not from the committees. Nobody said that they were going to change anything. And neither, and maybe from the word ceremonial, I am on record on your show, Ben, for saying that this is not a normal bill. This is not a bill where we can make amendments to. We're not ceremonial, because a majority, a simple majority, will have to pass this bill in order for it to go to the referendum. So it's not that we're simply rubber stamping it. We will have to present the report. We will have to table it at both houses. We will have to debate it. And for those who are for BBI, we'll have to convince members of that house why it is that this bill should go to a referendum. So to read that, I do not think are ceremonial duties.
As we continue to keep an eye on what's happening in the Senate and the National Assembly, Bwana Wakili Kipchumba Karori, what is your take on what's happening in both houses?
Thank you, Ben. I think, first of all, it is imperative to continue telling the viewers that BBI and all the process is just an inconvenience to the normal people. Whereas we agree that Article 255, 256, and 257 has allowed Kenyans a latitude to amend the law whenever and whatever they feel that the law should be amended. But the problem we have here is that the kind of amendments happening under the BBI amendment, they lack philosophy. These are people who came, they shook hands. Everybody came to the handshake with a different philosophy. That is why when the two teams sit down, they can't agree because of a simple problem. When Raila Odinga was in Busia, he's still promising people from that end a constituency. Where do you get a constituency? Well, Ben, all of us know that the BBI amendment, the bill as is currently, cannot be opened, because this bill was endorsed by signatures of people. If you are to reopen it, you have to go and endorse it again, because this is a popular initiative under Article 257. And even at this juncture, I cannot say that Parliament is ceremonial. It is still representative while processing the BBI bill. But what must be understood when you read Article 118, Article 10, and Article 257, when you read them conjunctively, we must come to the realization that public participation being done at this level is for posterity. So that in future, when we want to amend the Constitution, we will ask ourselves, what did people say when this question was asked? This is what they said. Number two, we are doing public participation as a transparency tool. Number three is so that we are carrying the public along in matters governance. This is not the ordinary bill where you are doing public participation to enrich the bill. You are doing public participation so that a mama mboga in a village knows that we went for public participation, we could not change, but this is what is coming. So that tomorrow when you tell somebody we have a prime minister, they know the chronological events. But Ben, the other thing that must also be called out is this. There are several things and there are several constitutional discussion, both constructive constitutional discussion and architectural constitutional discussions that must be carried out about BBI. And one of it is for the lack of a proper referendum law and the framework. That is why we have terms like Parliament is ceremonial, Parliament in this and that. It is because Parliament has failed to enact a law that allows the framework of carrying out the process we are carrying currently. But be it as it may, we must ask ourselves at the end of the day, what is the import of whatever views people are bringing on board. They must have a meaning in the total sum of the document at the end of the day. Whereas we must be alive to the dictates of the provisions of Article 255 and 257 for a popular initiative.
All right.
We cannot allow Parliament to develop an hybrid constitutional amendment at this juncture.
Let me take that to Senator Kajwang. Senator, what Bwana Wakili here says that lack of direction and common purpose between both sides is what is bringing all these problems. And he alludes to the small matter of the 70 new constituencies, which we understand is what is causing all this turbulence.
Ben, whereas I agree with my co-panelist Wakili generally, I disagree with him on the issue of lack of ideology and philosophy behind the BBI. Unless one suffers from political amnesia, we must remember the situation that this country faces. Every election, we must remember the situation we found ourselves in before the handshake, and we must remember how untidy and messy the political hygiene of this country was. So the philosophy and ideology behind the BBI, not just the bill before Parliament, but the other far-reaching administrative and policy recommendations is to ensure that we unite the country. I just wanted to point that out. I do not think that there is a problem between the followers of Raila and the followers of Uhuru, because this BBI is not about the two. We have seen all the other political players, everyone in the political space, supporting the BBI, including the deputy president. There could be reservations around process. There could be reservations around one clause or the other, but generally everyone in the political space is agreeable that we need to do this thing and we need to do it quickly. There is no crisis. And if there is a delay, then it could be a result of many other factors. And Mheshimiwa Shamala has laid it out openly. I'm a bit hesitant to discuss matters that are before committees, but there is no crisis, even if that report does not come before Parliament this week. And probably, even if it was to come next week, there could be certain delays in its processing. I've just mentioned that because of the COVID third wave, the Senate will be sitting only once a week. Initially, the thinking was that public participation could be done expeditiously, and the matter is brought to Parliament, and the debate is fast-tracked, and the readjustment of the calendar of Parliament might affect the timelines that had been set out. I do not think there's a problem. In fact, the issue of the 70 constituencies, if you look at the detailed report and not just the draft bill, there's a philosophy behind it. It is about making sure that units of representation, the numbers are fairly balanced, but without killing the constituencies that had been previously reserved. There has been an argument that it is the IBC that has the power to delimit constituencies. But that power is given to the IBC by the people. And it is the people amending the Constitution and introducing a principle of parity in representation that IBC should now ensure that it enforces. There is no way the IBC can declare a decision of the people to be unconstitutional or illegal.
All right. So, according to you, is Parliament, would the 70 new constituencies, which you promised as a pro-BBI brigade, who is supposed to delimit them? Because the BBI project would want those done in 6 months, but IEBC again says it has a sole mandate, and it needs at least 2 years to do that. So which way?
You see, the people have the power to introduce the broad principles and philosophies within which they should be governed. The IBC has an administrative mandate. When the IBC tells us that it requires 2 years to complete the task, they might probably be citing logistical challenges, they might be talking about resource constraints, but if the people so desire that this be executed within 6 months, it is a duty of Parliament as a body that manages the budget and the treasury to ensure that the IBC is capacitated. I want to urge IBC, being a constitutional commission, not to think, to be restrained inside the box, thinking about its current capacity, its current budget, I do believe that if that provision is adopted by the people through a referendum or through any other means, then Parliament shall ensure that it provides adequate resources. But then, Ben, we should not just cherry pick one provision of the BBI at the expense of the others. It is like when you're reading the Bible and you just decide to read the part that favors drinking or the part that favors polygamy. It must be looked at in a broader context.
All right.
A constitution or a constitutional amendment like this is a negotiated document. There are pluses and there could be minuses. And that is the only way you can ensure that you take on board the interests of the minority while at the same time ensuring that the interests of the majority do not whitewash all those others. And that's why even in the issue of constituencies, those protected constituencies are still there. Because if it was just about the issue of parity in representation, then the minorities who live in those constituencies would have been left out. You have to give some, and you have to gain some, you have to lose some.
All right.
And that is the spirit of the bill that we have before Parliament right now.
Kipchumba, what is your take on the assertion about 70 new constituencies? Can that mandate be taken away from the IEBC?
I think there is something that we are missing. I think we are missing the broad principality, and the good senator has tried to broaden on it. I take issue with the pronunciation by IEBC that they have the sole mandate to delimit boundaries of constituencies, wards, and any other boundary as so, because you have to understand that the power that IBC exercises is the power from Article 1 of our Constitution, sovereign power. All power belongs to the people, Ben. And IBC as an institution does not have a reservoir of extra powers away from the powers given to them by the sovereigns. If the sovereigns want to come and say, this is how we will go, IBC have no option, and they cannot raise the issue of unconstitutional constitutional amendments. It is not in their place. They are a creation of Article 1. We, the people, the sovereign power lies with us. The other thing that also must be understood within this broad area is we are ending in the danger of over-legislating or overwriting a constitution, where we end up writing that these constituencies should go here. What should be in a constitution, Ben, in a normal time, is we should put there the principles. Let's talk about the principle of population parity. If we have those ratios and how IBC will, the formula of getting near to equality or equity in terms of representation, that is the principle that should go into a constitution. I think it was wrong for the BBI proponents and the people who came up with BBI to end up writing that this and this number should go to this and this county. What they should have left at is that this is the formula. The same way we are not locking out when you read Article 2 or 3 and the amendments thereafter, you come, they have set out the threshold on how money should be distributed equitably to the 47 counties. They have not gone ahead and said Nairobi County should get over and above 10 billion. What they have done is that they have set down the principalities of equal distribution of resources. So I think at the end of the day,
yes,
whereas Chebukati tried making a point, the point is not tidy enough to be made in public. IBC should not look like they are blocking the people from exercising that which they want to do. The people retain the final say on what they want in the Constitution. You cannot run away from that which the people demand.
All right. Mheshimiwa Shamala, without talking about matters before the committee, why is this issue of the new constituencies in the BBI report so emotive and important?
I think the underlying reason for why it's so emotive and why it's so important and why an agenda may be driven from somewhere else is because we have, and one of the reasons that we have postponed the tabling of the report today was to analyze the 8 cases that are before the courts challenging this entire process of the constitutional amendment bill and the forthcoming referendum. But one of the cases is, the actual case is that an argument is being made that you cannot touch any of the commissions in the Constitution, that this Constitution in particular sections, in particular areas, cannot be changed. That, in my considered opinion, is one of the most outrageous averments I have ever heard of and argued in my life, argued in my life. So I think that the IEBC, because it's a commission, they want this particular chapter that deals with commissions, Judicial Service Commission, the IEBC, etc., not to be touched at all. So there's a deeper, let me say, for lack of a better word, a deeper game in this, and maybe the IEBC, you can sometimes be pulled along. But what the IEBC said, and in all fairness to Chebukati, when he appeared before us during the public participation process, is that it is the duty and the job of the IEBC to do the delimitation of the boundaries. Having said that, once the people of Kenya, and as my learned friend stated, all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya. Should they go to the referendum and say, yes, we want these 70 constituencies in accordance with this particular formula as provided for in the BBI, then that commission will have to comply with the wishes and the will of the people of Kenya.
Right. Senator Kajong, I have to ask you this. There's a rumor, or is it a conspiracy theory, that this issue began from a place of ODM being duped about these 70 new constituencies, that what Raila Odinga was given initially in terms of the BBI report is not what was the final report. What is your take on this?
Ben, I don't think that is a matter of fact. Raila Odinga has been very, involved, very informed. The co-chair of the BBI task force was Professor Adam Solo, and as you know, that at the time when the report was coming out and the bill was being drafted, our good friend, the late Senator Haji, was indisposed. So you could easily say that Professor Adam Solo was the one who was driving the BBI task force. And in a country where people like assigning personalities to leaders, you'd easily say that Professor Adam Solo was Raila's man. So I think Raila Odinga was involved and informed at every stage. I don't think there's any surprise. But it goes back to what I said earlier. If you look at even the distribution of the constituencies, why would you begrudge Ruiru an additional constituency? Why would it be now repulsive that areas around Kiambu, where there's serious population explosion, why should they not get parity in representation? The fact that it happens that they come from certain provinces or counties of this country should not deny these people representation. We have seen situations where development is driven by small things like the NGCDF, which is used to build schools, to provide bursaries. Why don't we want to ensure that there is parity? What makes us think that if Ruiru, for example, was given an additional constituency, it is going to favor a certain community? And it is the same Ruiru where you have someone elected who is not an ethnic original from that area. So I think we need to expand our thinking. You asked, why would the number of constituencies be important? Of course, we are getting into a system where the Prime Minister shall be determined on the basis of number of seats that his party or his coalition has in the House. But we must agree that a constitution is a negotiated document. And as long as the principles are there, and of course, I'm sympathetic to those who think that we were too prescriptive in saying that this number of constituencies should come from these counties. We probably should have left it at the issue of principles and the philosophy of representation. But sometimes you also want to illustrate to the people how they're going to benefit from the proposed changes. So, Ben, it is not true that Raila Odinga probably could have been sidelined or under-informed in this process. He's been part of it at every stage. He has made certain promises and commitments to the people whenever he goes around the country. Some of those promises and some of those commitments are things that can be achieved through legislation. Some of them are things that can be achieved through regulation. But those that require a constitutional amendment, I think what we have is a package that is before the House, that is before the country. What we need to deal with is this package. And any other consequential matters can be dealt with through statute, through regulation, and through policy and administrative measures.
Well said, Bwana Senator. Would you say that ODM are okay with the constituencies as they have been put in the BBI report?
Ben, I represent Homa Bay County, and in Homa Bay County, I've got two constituencies that are extremely vast. And Ndiwa constituency is very vast, with close to 100,000 potential voters. Karachuonyo constituency is also very vast. I would have been happy if these constituencies could have been split. But that does not take away the role of the IEBC in delimitation. You see that role that they claim is theirs exclusively? What we are saying right now is that the people can override it. But even after that, the IEBC, if their duty in delimitation is left intact, they can still go back to Ndiwa and review. They can still go back to Karachuonyo and review. The only limitation that IEBC has in delimitation is that for it to create a constituency, it has to kill another constituency. And that's a crisis that sometimes people find themselves in. So yes, Ben, I might not be 100% okay, because I know the burden of representation in these regions, how heavy it is. But I do believe that a window still exists. After the BBI, the window still exists in the regular delimitation of constituency boundaries.
Mr. Shamala, let me come to you. Your House Speaker, Justin Muturi, has given the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee of the National Assembly 10 days to present or table that report in the House. The Senate Speaker has also given the Senate by the 6th of April to table the report. Are you confident that you will be able to go beyond the hardline stances and agree or complete this report?
First and foremost, I was pleasantly surprised, because as we were in the House today and I was consulting and we had consultations with our chair, Honorable Muturi Kigano, we were ready to burn the midnight oil all weekend, like we did last weekend, to have this report ready to be tabled Tuesday next week. So it was very gracious of the Honourable Speaker, Justin Muturi, to have stated that we bring it, and he did say April's Fool Day, I think, which is next Thursday, 1st of April, and along with the Senate, we're absolutely confident, at least Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. We have had meetings literally all weekend. We had a meeting yesterday as well, along with the members of the Senate, and our report will be ready. But do remember that the Honourable Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Muturi, did say that the process will continue with or without the report. I think he was categorical on that matter. But I am speaking as a Justice and Legal Affairs member. I know that our report will be ready and will be tabled by next week, as per the directions of the Speaker.
Well, Akili, you have the final say on this before we switch over to something else. Senator Kajwang did say we should not cherry pick, but is this particular issue in this BBI report, does it have the potential to derail the BBI process from where you sit?
Ben, you have to look at the BBI process from the season we are entering. We are entering a highly charged political season, and whatever is being sticky at the BBI now in the bill and the things around the BBI is that constituency. Everybody is coming to the realization that, wait a minute, we ought to have gotten a constituency. These and these ought to have happened here and there. And it will inform a lot of other things. You have also to remember that we are entering a season where coalitions are starting to build up. And the BBI came through the handshake. The objectives of the handshake in March 2017 or 2018 are no longer the same as is currently, because even the players who came together, their goals being different as they were, they are no longer scoring in the same goal. Everybody now, Uhuru Kenyatta is realizing that I need to put together a legacy, whereas the other people are realizing that we have an election to run, we need to put ourselves in order. So all these other things, coupled now with the problems of COVID and the issues of rising costs, and I think Kenyans are becoming no longer so much interested in the political happenings if the by-election, the results from the by-election that the turnout are to go by. So we really find ourselves in a very hard place, and that in itself brings forth other hurdles to the BBI, and that is why the discussion now goes to another level. And also, Ben, there is something that we must also understand. This gerrymandering and the back and forth, maybe it's from, we have had conspiracy theorists and white smoke peddlers from the powers that be telling us that this BBI, some of the provisions in the bill do not need a referendum, which we do not necessarily refuse, but we know it is a game, it is a chess game. So every aspect and every part of the these two BBI teams have an interest to pursue. So I think at the end of the day, we cannot look at BBI from the black and white that it is written. We look at the BBI through the prism and the lenses of the people who pushed it under our throats.
All right. I'll just leave it there. We are following on events in both houses of Parliament. Justin Muturi, Speaker of the National Assembly, has given the National Assembly's Justice and Legal Affairs Committee 10 days to try and to table, actually, that report on the floor of the House. That is until the 1st of April. The Senate's legal team has been given until the 6th of April to table the report in Parliament. We shall continue to keep an eye on what's happening there. I want us to switch gears and talk about some real politics now on the ground, something that Bonawakili mentioned, the alignments and political realignments that we have seen in the recent past. We want to try and demystify the so-called One Kenya alliance, the alliance that we have seen get emboldened by recent results in by-elections, first in Matungu in Kakamega, and Kabuchai in the county of Bungoma, and then recently last week in Machakos in the senatorial race that was won by Wiper, and that member being sworn in today. Let me begin with you, Senator Kajwang. Ford Kenya, Wiper, KANU, and ANC are coming up strongly, being emboldened by some of these results, and we are seeing them being supported by the powers that be in terms of Jubilee, the other partner in the BBI. This seems to be putting ODM at loggerheads with this so-called One Kenya alliance. What is your take on all these alignments and political realignments, even as we go to the referendum and ultimately to the 2022 politics?
There is a distinct difference between running for your life and running for your lunch. When you have to run for your life, you definitely have to run faster than someone who's running for their lunch. In the by-elections that we have seen, there are political parties and players who are running for their lives. They're running for their political lives. Look at Kabuchai. Kabuchai is my senior's home area, Moses Wetangula. And if he would have lost Kabuchai, then really his political life would have been on the line. Even if you go to Matungu, being in Kakamega, to a great extent it was an ANC seat, and it was important that they retain it. Machakos was a CCM seat, but CCM was in a coalition agreement with Wiper. And so definitely we knew that Wiper had an upper hand.
CCU.
These victories are not really incremental. Yes, CCU. These wins are not incremental because, Ford Kenya, ANC, or Wiper are not increasing their numbers significantly in Parliament. In fact, they're just leveling their numbers. They're just going back to the level that they were at. But I think that the coming together of some of the political players it needs to be encouraged. You know, Kenya, the manner in which this country, the politics has been played, it is very difficult for one person to go it alone. You must build coalitions, and you must carry along several interests, many interests. What remains to be seen is whether this One Kenya alliance truly represents the interests of Kenyans and the people that come from the regions they come from, or it is about the interests of the political leaders. But let me say, it is always fashionable to run for president for good reason. And let me tell you why. Kamala Harris is now the Vice President of the United States of America. She ran for the presidency, even though the votes she got were not very many. People like Pete Buttigieg are now in the cabinet of Joe Biden. They ran for president. And traditionally, you remember, even Hillary Clinton was made Secretary of State because she made a stab for the presidency. And so, likewise, everyone wants to run for the presidency so that if they don't get it, they can get something one level or two levels down. And with BBI, there are expanded responsibilities. The presidency has been decongested quite a bit, such that the executive or the cabinet will now be sitting in parliament. What I see with all these presidential declarations are politically smart leaders who are positioning themselves for a negotiation. And I want to tell you, Ben, that there will be robust conversations like the ones you saw in Machakos, where the president called Raila Odinga and the other team, and they agreed on a few things to ensure that the Wiper candidate carried the day. There are going to be a lot of coalitions, and I think that that is unique to our politics. And this is why we've been saying that we need to have some homegrown political ideology and arrangement. It cannot just be a winner takes all, but it has to be a conversation where people come to the table, people representing various interests, and ensuring that ultimately, when there is victory, the victory or the victor are the interests rather than the people who are sitting on that table.
All right. Mheshimiwa Shamala, the meeting that Senator Kajwang alludes to was in State House last week, where the Maendeleo Chap-Chap candidate in the Machakos senatorial by-election pulled out of the race in favor of the Wiper candidate, and that meeting involved leaders from the various factions supporting the BBI, including ODM and Jubilee was there, and even NARC Kenya, led by Charity Ngilu, was there. Would you say there is an attempt or an effort to have all pro-BBI, teams forming one coalition? Is that viable?
Yes, of course. I definitely say that. And the reason I say that is I want to take you back to 2005 and the Wako draft, which was a Bomas draft. It became a Wako draft, it became a Kilifi draft, and when the tensions set in. In fact, it was the precursor to the 2007 post-election violence. Before that, it was the Naivasha draft, where everything changed. Now, I think we have learned from history, and we have understood, and we've had this debate, but we can say it for those who may have not have heard, we can no longer have a first by the post, a winner takes it all kind of election or system of democracy. We have to tailor-make what suits us, not what suits somebody else, not what we were told to do a couple of years ago, and we have come to that realization. And it was for that reason I'm almost certainly sure, I don't speak for it on behalf of the President of the Republic of Kenya, but when the handshake came together, they have sat back and they've looked at Africa, look at a country like Tanzania and how far it has progressed with its own ideals of what and how governance should be. So yes, indeed, it is important that everyone comes on board. We're nowhere near the situation that we were with the tensions of the 2005 election referendum, where there was killings, there was tension, and really it sowed the seeds for 2007 post-election violence. So I see no harm whatsoever in the President of the Republic of Kenya reaching out to party leaders, reaching out to the Right Honourable Prime Minister, if it's for the good of this country, if it is we are planting the seeds for posterity for this country, then that is okay for me.
Honorable Shamala, there are those who say that what is happening would be akin to that 41 versus 1 kind of politics. That is the pro-BBI team.
That really worries me. And that, again, you see, Ben, first we came here and we were told that Parliament was trying to turn, I'm not saying you said it, but you've heard it out there, is to trying to take over the referendum, the constitutional amendment bill. Now there is this, who is this 41 against 1? Because if you look across the entire country, every part of Kenya, every region was represented. Tana River had their vote thrown out because of issues, I think, with public participation. Then Baringo's issue is in court. Wasangishu abstained. Nandi voted no. Bomet voted yes. Kericho voted yes. So who is this one? This is the dangerous who, because I've never seen the country more united in the passing by the county assemblies of this constitutional amendment bill.
Well, Akili, what are your thoughts on this One Kenya alliance that is being touted?
Ben, all of us have been in this country in the discourse of our politics. Before, there was an alliance known as G7, and a few mornings when some of those people there were told their votes were as little as the tickets in somewhere along Mombasa Road, they disappeared. We came to G3, and I don't know what happened. By the time we entered the election in 2013, it was William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta who had remained in all that bandwagon. It is normal for people to come together and try to salvage their quickly vanishing political careers. The coming together of the One Kenya Alliance, there is no principle or philosophy behind it. It is just to try and make sure that they corner Raila Odinga to honor the NASA arrangement. But the reality is this: if you are to even allow this One Kenya, or the scared, or the sacred, or the scared, you know, I don't know which, they have so many names. If you are to allow the scared alliance to even have all the votes in the regions they are saying they are dominating, the votes can go past 3 million, Ben. Look at it this way: Raila Odinga got 6.8 million votes in the last election. If you give it to Kalonzo Musyoka, the whole of Ukambani, it has around 1.4 million votes. You give Musalia Mudavadi and Wetangula the whole of Western, that is 1.8 million votes. That comes to a region of 3.2. That leaves Raila Odinga still having some more votes. So you ask yourself the question: people come together, Ben, to form coalition. Politics is about volumetrics. Politics is not about these other things. And at the end of the day, it is unfortunate that when leaders are coming together, they are not coming together to sell an ideology. They are coming together to start saying, you know, this country must be ruled by tribal chiefs, so and so must be something here. Ben, the greatest ideology behind planting trees is that you make sure that you have as many trees, as many young trees in a forest as possible. You do not cut the young trees to remain with the tallest trees. That is the philosophy behind the One Kenya. Baljon, Chap, Baljon, Ngilu, so that you have Kalonzo in Ukambani, you have Musalia Mudavadi in Western, you have somebody somewhere. But at the end of the day, are we creating a nation of tribal chiefs, or we are creating a nation where institutions work? Ben, there is something that we must disabuse when scholars or intellectuals meet in such a meeting. There is nothing like the bill has taken away this thing of winner take all. That is a fallacy, Ben. The thing is this: if we want to reduce the power of a president, we strengthen institutions. We remove the power from the center and strengthen devolution. We strengthen institutions, parliament. We strengthen these other institutions, so that at the end of the day, the power does not rest with an individual, but power rests with institutions. BBI has not told us that if I lose a gubernatorial race, I come from Uasin Gishu County, for example, where Mandago and Buzeki, the margin was so small. What happened? Mandago became the governor. Buzeki is outside there making noise. In this BBI, post-BBI, what happens to governors? What happens to candidates who lose MCA seats? At the end of the day, the fights people fight, Ben, we are told they fight because of presidential election. But the problem is the tensions begin at the gubernatorial races.
Right.
Take, for example, Embu County, where we have two distinct sub-ethnic groups. If one group loses the gubernatorial race and we have a problem, that will also contribute highly to the problems we have. Look at what does BBI robustly propose about our elections. So at the end of the day, by August this year, there will be a different political calibration in town altogether. Yes. Whatever we are seeing in this One Kenya alliance is just a curtain raiser. The real dance is about to begin. And I am not sure if some of the people in that One Kenya alliance can sustain a serious political dance in the stage.
All right. Senator Kajwang, in your final remarks, what would be your thoughts on a proposal we are hearing of having all the pro-BBI, political teams forming one coalition, and having the ODM leader Raila Odinga as the presidential candidate in one transitional term?
Well, if there was a thinking of making Raila Odinga a transitional president, to me it is very welcome, because I have interacted with Raila Odinga and I know his passion for this country, and I know what he has gone through, and I know that at the level, at his age, and at the point he is at politically, he is more concerned about leaving a lasting legacy that will turn this country from a mediocre average country to one of the global, one of the strong economies globally. So I think that could be a good decision. However, between now and the next election, there is work to be done. BBI has brought us all together, and everyone has focused on building bridges to a prosperous nation. But there are issues that are still going on in the country. We still have issues of high cost of living brought about by taxes, brought about by the COVID pandemic. We still have the issues of debt. We still have other issues that are afflicting the common Kenyan. What I expect this One Kenya team to be doing is to provide an alternative voice. They cannot walk around, appear like they are miming everything the president is saying, miming everything that Raila Odinga is saying. They need to show us leadership. Otherwise, they will just be flagged as Raila Endorse Me Alliance or Uhuru Endorse Me Alliance. When we are done with the referendum, we will need to go back to some of the provisions that were in that draft report. The provisions on how to restart our economy, the provisions on how to create jobs for our youth. And this is where we should be getting ideas from those who believe that they are offering an alternative view. It should not just be a rush to ensure that everyone is in the same bus, so that at the end of the day in 2022, everyone gets a position of prime minister, deputy, or one thing or the other. I want to challenge the One Kenya team to offer alternative views. Their members in parliament, their leadership outside parliament, we need to hear that if they were part of one big alliance, what are their ideas on the economy, what are the ideas on health, what are the ideas on strengthening devolution. I think that Kenyans are fairly enlightened, and you can see Kenyans on Twitter, Kenyans on social media. We know what is going on, and we know what is going on in other countries. Now that even President John Magufuli has died in Tanzania, it is allowing us an opportunity to do some comparisons. How did Tanzania build their standard gauge railway? How did they do BRT, bus rapid transit? How have they done ports? How have they done hospitals? How have they revived their airline? Kenya Airways has just recorded a record-breaking loss, 30-something billion in terms of losses. We are now getting an opportunity to compare ourselves with neighbors and see how other people are doing it and how they are getting it right. I want to challenge the One Kenya team that let them not just parrot BBI, because BBI has been sung to a point of nausea by the proponents. Let them give us an alternative narrative that can provide hope that post-2022, there will be some serious agenda items to be considered.
Thank you, Senator. Honorable Shamal, I have the final word today. Your final remarks.
My final remarks are really that as we wait as a country, we remain optimistic. We remember that ultimately we are one Kenya. We are one people. And some of these narratives that are being peddled around, we put them to the test. And I want to say, thank you, KTN, for inviting us here today so that you could hear from us these different viewpoints. Because some of those stories that I hear out there, I do wonder where exactly they come from. There is no trouble in paradise. We will have the report ready, the JLAT report tabled next week, Thursday, and then we'll be back on KTN to discuss the same.
All right.
Asante sana for having us on the show, Ben Kitili.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me on Newsline tonight. Jennifer Shamala, nominated Member of Parliament, also a member of the National Assembly's Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. We shall be putting our cameras squarely on them as they write that report. Lawyer and political strategist Kipchumba Karori, the senator for the county of Homa Bay, Moses Kajwang. Always a pleasure having you in studio with me. Thank you for joining me on Newsline tonight. That's why we leave it on the show. Be sure to join us every Tuesday night here on Newsline as we try to dissect some of the biggest issues that matter to Kenyans. I am Ben Kitili. Good night from Nairobi.